I read that you were born in Pittsburgh, like Andy Warhol.
Yes, I am from Pittsburgh. Andy Warhol, Martha Graham, and Gertrude Stein.
But they all escaped from Pittsburgh.
Moi aussi.
Speak English. No, was he already someone famous for you?
No. Growing up in Pittsburgh, there were not famous people at that time. But of course, when I got to New York, Andy was Andy. And so one of the projects I worked on with Andy was the robot of Andy Warhol. You know, there was going to be an Andy Warhol robot, and I was going to stage a show with the robot as Andy. And Andy wanted the robot to go on late night television to do all the talk shows so he wouldn't have to. And one of the last things in his life, we measured him. We have a complete replica of Andy with audio animatronics from the 80s. But of course, when he died, the foundation canceled everything.
It was 87.
Yes, but I spent, I did, of course, get to know Andy in that time in New York, because I was in New York in the 80s also.
But you know, that's interesting, because I was thinking about what's going on now with Yayoi Kusama and Vuitton. All the advertisement all over the world, in fact. Yes. And everyone is upset about that, but I thought if Andy Warhol would be alive, he would love to do it.
He would have a good time.
Of course, and it's the same principle, it's robots.
Yes, exactly, and it's both dehumanization and humanizing everything. It does both at the same time.
But it's about celebrity too.
It's about celebrity, it's about presence everywhere. It's about this omnipresence. And the celebrity, of course, Andy realized it doesn't matter if they like you or don't like you. The only thing that matters is they're talking about you. That's it.
Exactly.
That's worth money. That is worth money.
And love, probably.
Well, love also in a strange way, because in our time, the only international currency is celebrity. And that works everywhere.
And so are you sensitive to this kind of question, celebrity?
No, because I'm somebody who only people who know what I do know who I am. Nobody else has any idea that I exist, and that's fine. It's just fine.
So you can walk in the street, you mean?
No problem, exactly. I can be a real person, no problem.
But you are very much recognizable.
Yes, well, just because I want to enjoy life, but not because I'm out to be recognized. It's really just a question of having a pleasure in being yourself, of course, and also the real freedom that our generation experienced from the punk era on, you know, which was, there is no one way to be, and that's such a relief. It's very beautiful.
But I read that you have sold or given, I don't know, your archive to the Getty, which is kind of celebrity, no?
No. The Getty has many, many holdings of incredibly obscure artists. But the Getty, I've done a lot of work with the Getty over the years. And so they're very nearby. And so I know them very well. And a lot of my projects in Los Angeles have really connected with the Getty quite frequently. And the Getty has been quite visionary in supporting a lot of my work. So I really wanted to thank them.
So you gave?
Yeah.
So what does it represent to give your archive to the Getty?
Well, for me, I'm not somebody who looks back ever. So it's a relief.
But you have some archive.
I have a large archive. But the point is, for me, theater is the art of the moment and the art of the next moment. And so it's looking back, I don't have time. I have so much incoming every day. I don't have time to stop and look back. So it's great to have that out of my life. And that in my life, I can really focus on the present.
But theater is also the art of the past, because it's older than cinema, for example.
Yes, but it's channeling the art of the past in really deep ways, which is beautiful. And so, yes, Wagner's Tristan Isolde, Wagner discovered karma. He was reading Buddhist texts, which were starting to be available in German in the 19th century, the Max Muller Wisdom of the East series. And of course, when we look at them now, they're incomprehensible, because now we have the Dalai Lama as a friend and neighbor. But back then, nobody knew what this Buddhist stuff was. And so these anthropologues would just be trying to transcribe these very obscure texts. And of course, in Buddhism and Hinduism, everything, the teaching comes through a master. So just what Wagner got was incomprehensible. But of course, that's the project of the artist, is from these few fragments, you create a world. And that's what Wagner did in Tristan and Isolde. And the big shock was Wagner understanding karma, that in which modern science is now confirming, inside every cell of your body is the trauma of your mother, your grandparents. All of these remembered traumas, remembered joys move across generations. Wagner realized that's not words, that's feeling, that's music.
And that's what you are showing here?
Well, what Wagner did with Tristan and Isolde for the first time in the history of Western music is create the endless melody. A melody that goes across generations, that goes across centuries, that goes across civilizations. And this is why Tristan never stops. All opera before this was numbers, a chorus, an aria, and suddenly Wagner wrote the first opera. Everything is woven together, never stops, because it's about eternity. It's about something that moves from your ancestors and is in your body right now, and you hand on to the future. Now, Bill Viola and Kira, his wife, were living in Japan in the 70s when Sony was inventing each new step of video. And so they were working at Sony, and they had a Zen dojo and a Zen master teaching them. And they kept in touch with the Zen master his whole life. And so everything Wagner was trying to guess at, Bill actually understood and was in regular meditation class. And so this entire, what Zen did to the arts in America and gradually across the world, which is the 70s, all of Buddhism moved from Tibet and from Vietnam to France and New York City. And so this incredible presence of Zen as a living presence, and also new Zen, not the old Zen, but Buddhism reinvented itself when it came to the West. And so, interestingly, this opera, which is not like any other opera that Wagner ever wrote or anybody ever wrote, this opera inspired artists for generations and generations.
So tell me, the genesis of this project with Bill Viola, how did it start?
Well, I've known Bill and Kira for most of my life. When I moved to California, they were the first people I met, and they were one of the reasons I wanted to move to California.
Ah, really?
And so, because I thought, anywhere there's an artist making this kind of work, I want to live there.
Where was it? When was it?
This was 1987.
Okay.
And so we were friends right away. My first night there, we had dinner together. And so we spent a lot of time together across the years. I was always inviting Bill to work in theater. He said, no, theater is shabby, it's a mess, you people don't clean anything up, there's no fine edge, there's no fine line, I will never work in theater. And he said, at the other side, he invited me to work in museums. So when we made his 25-year retrospective, which toured 5 museums, then I was
what museum? What was the main venue?
The Whitney Museum, the Chicago Museum, the San Francisco Museum, the Stedelijk here in Amsterdam. It was, and I think there are 2 more museums I'm not thinking of. Anyway, a big tour, a big international tour. And so all of which Bill and I worked very closely together on the catalog, on the exhibition. A Bill Viola show always consisted of a Bill Viola piece, separate from the museum in special conditions. Suddenly, if you have 17 Bill Viola pieces, what is that like? Do they all make noise together? Are they in dialogue with each other? I mean, because these pieces are not quiet. Each one is its own world. What happens if these worlds touch? So we worked a lot together. So I've read through most of his notebooks. I have a lifelong connection to his work. And so always we were discussing if he would ever do something in theater. He said no. And then we started talking with the LA Philharmonic, with Esa-Pekka Salonen, and at this point, Gerard Mortier was coming to run the Paris Opera. Gerard Mortier had been the director of the Ruhr Triennale and had commissioned large works from Bill to go in those disused factories. So Gerard Mortier and Bill and Kira knew each other very well. And so Tristan became the logical meeting point because Wagner imagined this Gesamtkunstwerk, the total work of art. What is the total work of art? Where music is in dialogue with poetry, with dance, with visual art, that all these things are meeting as equals. And I needed for Wagner an artist who could look eye to eye with Wagner and not serve Wagner, but be in dialogue. And for me, this is about the Godardian master-slave relationship of sound and image. Right? That the image cannot be the slave of the sound, and the sound cannot be the slave of the image. They each need their independence.
But what was the relation of Bill Viola with Wagner?
Well, Bill had no relation with Wagner until he had already shot all of the material.
Oh.
Bill really chose to not be inebriated by this music. He said he kept the music out of his system. He responded only to Wagner's text. And for Bill, he felt very strongly that he needed his images to have the same power as the music. But that meant he could never listen to the music.
In competition?
No, just its own independent life. So it was not a soundtrack. He never created
do you feel
soundtrack.
comfortable about that?
It was fantastic.
Because the music.
Well, I mean, again, our generation, we're all children of John Cage. So for me, it's the joy. That's what I do in opera, and why many times critics hate my productions, because they really want to see everything serve the music. And you just want to say, excuse me, that's not the relationship of intelligent adults. We disagree with each other all the time. It's normal. That's what makes something alive and human, is there's an actual discussion. I'm not going to just agree with everything you say. I'm going to have my own ideas, my own feelings, my own impulse. And of course, in the opera, frequently, in the music critics, they want everything to match all the time. And my productions very much create this shock.
So you are not looking for harmony?
Well, let's put it this way. Not 24 hours a day. You really want to say life is about contrast. Life is about somebody who's not like me. Life is about somebody who has another idea. And life is about, if you're in a real relationship with someone, it's about doing what they want to do sometimes, but also not always. And sometimes we're going to do something else.
Yes.
And sometimes we're going to disagree. And the disagreement deepens the relationship. It actually creates a deeper space where love has to go to another place.
So he came with his suitcase full of images?
Well, Bill and I talked about Tristan. I brought him a lot of books, and we had very specific things we talked about. And then he simply shut the door for 2 years.
Wow. So when
and
was
came back
that?
with 5 hours of video.
When was that?
Oh my gosh. It was in the early, 2004, and was it 2004? Early 2000s.
Okay.
And for 2 years, he made this video, and we didn't say one word.
Wow.
And he was on this project because Bill, he goes deep inside himself. Everything is about this plunge into an inner state of consciousness, and not the outside world, but the inside world. And so, to make his work, he shuts everything off. He closes the door, and he goes inward, which is, in any spiritual tradition, it's what you do when you pray. You shut the door, you get quiet.
And when he opens the door?
There's 5 hours of incredible video. And it's such an astounding gift. And of course, now I've seen it for 18 years. I know these videos extremely well now. When they were new, they were very new to me also. But
and you accepted them, or you asked
instantly,
some changes?
No, instantly. And then instantly I started making something in dialogue with them. And so now that I know them very well across the years, what I'm doing on stage is even more intricate in terms of its dialogue with what Bill Viola is doing. And at the same time, I have a very real responsibility, which is the largest and in a way most powerful life work of Bill Viola is a piece that can only be seen in a building that you hire an orchestra of 100 a chorus of 50, and the rarest singers in the world. Because there's no other way to see this. You can't see it in a museum. He paid for this by making small editions of a few of the images that are in museums and in the homes of private collectors. And that paid for the entire project, because no theater could ever commission 5 hours of Bill Viola. It was huge shoots, some big Hollywood shoots with airplane hangars and giant crews and walls of fire and all these very, very dramatic things. And again, some things he made just with a handheld camera standing in Long Beach by the sea. But of course it's Bill Viola holding the camera. So the way he sees the sunset is unbelievable. It's so beautiful and haunting and mythic. And of course, all of Bill's work has this mythic emanation. You feel you're in the presence of something larger. It's never anecdotal. It's never psychological. It's a little like, oh, poor you, and oh, this will, how about a little cup of tea? And Bill always takes you to this immense cosmic place of powerful myth, powerful something flowing through all of history.
And so now it's the third time you are showing it? In Paris, I mean?
No, I think we showed it first in, I think, 2004. So Five? So we've been showing it ever since. It's come back every few years.
And you change things from time to time?
Every day, because of course in my line of work, you wake up every day and you have new ideas. So every day, yes. This is very different from previous versions. One of the most important things, I would say, is the casting. The casting this time, 1/2 of the singers are people of color. And so you have a black Isolde, and it's another story. Suddenly you're into all of these other dimensions. Plus, the whole society is different. In the last 3 years, everything has changed.
So it means what?
We're feeling what's already in Wagner, already in Bill, but now we really feel the intensity of the anger, the intensity of the rage, that you're living in a society of huge amount of rage. How do you move through that to some kind of rapprochement, some kind of reconciliation, some kind of understanding? Meanwhile, we're living in a period of epidemic suicide, and people can't bear to still be here. Tristan and Isolde each are determined to kill themselves in the first act.
So you change radically some details?
I would just say everything, as always, a great work of art you read differently in each moment of history. You know, I mean, Shakespeare's Hamlet doesn't mean whatever Shakespeare thought it meant.
Yeah, but you could also make an intervention, a radical intervention on the...
Well, for me, what's so interesting is we respond differently to the same image. And so it generates new emotion, an emotion that we didn't experience before.
Okay.
And so, yes, most of the images and the staging is the same, except not at all.
Because of the reader, of the viewer.
Exactly. And so we spent most of the rehearsals crying our eyes out. It was so heartrending and so liberating. And we were dealing with really intense issues. And we made some breakthroughs, and we faced them, and we were dealing with difficult things. Everybody in the room.
And you are not afraid of I ask something obvious or provocative, but you are not afraid of something like a competition between two creative talents like you and the artist?
No, you want things to be as rich as possible. You want every moment in life to be rich, and you don't want to say, oh, I don't want to be with intelligent people because I'm frightened. It's like the opposite. You want to be with the most amazing people in the world every day. And so that is the joy of it. It's not a fear, it's the pleasure. It's the actual exhilaration. Is you're with brilliant people who have ideas you would never have, or who force you to do something you would never have dreamed to do, and then it's liberating for everyone. You know, and so for me, that's joy. That's the pleasure of collaboration, and that's my life work, is never about me. It's not what I want to see. It's this incredible dialogue from really creative people, and at the end of the day, we arrive at something nobody walked in the room thinking.
Merci, monsieur.